So here we are at the CIPD's HRD conference in London, where the conference has just heard from Elizabeth Sideris, Executive Director of HR at Cancer Research UK, about the charity's work on leadership development. I caught up with Elizabeth after the session. Elizabeth, you talked about the need of moving from functional leadership to organisational leadership. Explain what that is and why it's important.
Yes, we're a very highly specialised, sort of functionally expert-driven organisation. You can imagine lots of scientists and experts in terms of, the medical field. And it was very important that we could harness all of that to a sort of different level. So the specialisms are brilliant. We're all really good at those disciplines. My own within HR, the finance director, etc. But actually, to be able to find a level of potential which was a commonality above all of that, we felt was going to move the organisation into a different place. And becoming more organisational was just kind of harnessing all of that potential in a more cohesive way. Got a very strong strategic direction for the charity, and we just felt that we were going to be able to get at that more through a greater degree of connectedness and sort of cohesion in that broader dialogue at the organisational level.
Your programme analysed the existing profile of your leaders as the starting point. Why did you take that approach? Why was that the right way to go?
Really important to know where we are. So I've got this thing about the importance of the sort of current reality. I think that if we're trying to move from somewhere, you can only do it by knowing where you are today. And we had a sense of that. I mean, we've got quite a sophisticated leadership development programme in place anyway. But it was being the degree to which we were engaging in it and really gaining something from it was where I felt there was a gap. And so this sense of looking at some new initiative, something that was much more tailored to the individual and the individual's kind of strengths and contributions, was going to me, if that worked, that would be a building block for sort of getting a much fuller picture of what we have within, in terms of our resource within the organisation, and how we were going to use that in a more connected way. We're very collaborative, but I don't think we're always as cohesive or connected as we needed to be. And it was an initiative that was going to say, well, we think this might be a way of getting at that.
And you used the 360 approach, but with an external coach coming in. Explain how that relationship worked.
Yeah, so this was all part of the programme. So it sat within the sort of broader leadership development initiative. And I think it was important that it was all part of that, because I think in the past we've done different components of, people had different coaches, they'd done 360, it didn't always feed back into the organisation. For me, it was about a set of components that were all going to drive to the same end. So we knew what we were trying to do with this. The 360 piece, I think it's been out there for a long time, some of it works well, some doesn't. We were really, really clear that it was part of this overall in-depth character assessment, which was the analysis and the review that's done by the consultant, and then the way the 360 was used to sort of come into that enabled us to get, I mean, it was still anonymous, sometimes it wasn't, but that was individuals choosing, but it enabled us to get to a level of scrutiny and depth and understanding of individuals' characters and strengths in a way which we hadn't previously with 360. So I think it's vital. I think the evidence has got to come from the people that people are working with, but I think we got to we got underneath that risk of superficiality that I think always can sit with 360. And then the vital piece was the role that the coach played in ensuring that the dialogue that followed, so there was a comprehensive written report, the character strengths, the intelligences that I talked about, and that was absolutely used to get to the difficult things, to get really underneath this, clearly people are successful, they wouldn't be directors if they weren't at that, if they weren't, they wouldn't be at that level. But it was absolutely seeing where's the profile of this individual so we can strengthen aspects which are already strong and grow those areas which needed to be maybe individuals made more aware of, and by being more aware you're better informed in terms of the contribution you can make. So it was quite deep, but it was very powerful, and as I mentioned in the talk, the fantastic thing was people really connected to it. They found it valuable, they found it insightful, and there was a kind of shift in their own awareness. It's good.
And one of the main outcomes of the programme has been the Directors Network. Explain what's involved in that.
Yeah, so this was self-forming. We have a group that we call the Extended Leadership Group, and that group is Exec Board and Directors. We meet roughly every quarter. And in some of those meetings, they tended to be shaped by Executive Board. The agenda might be shaped a bit by Executive Board. And I'd been very keen to work with some of those directors to say there's scope for owning more of this. you want to be more in the process of that, driving the organisation decision making, then you have to find a way of enabling that, of sort of having more of the dialogue around it. And that's, I think, what came out of that. So I was really pleased that there was that recognition by an important leadership group to say they could own more of that and not just sort of have that sort of position with the executive board, and that they themselves would then be hopefully displaying a different degree of leadership to how they manage their own teams and departments. So really good outcome, and I think just the whole shift in self-awareness is staying with us, and that'll manifest itself in other ways beyond just the Directors Network, so performance conversations, that sort of thing.
Marvellous. Thanks very much for your time.
Pleasure. Cheers.